Hi Nishant, this is Mohan from Atlanta, USA. Cloning investing. Hello, Mr. Mohan. So nice to meet you. I am just going public. I'm going live. I'm not going public as yet, unfortunately. But let me just send this message to my folks on WhatsApp and then we will begin the show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. That's what we are waiting for, right? The show that we deserve. Just 1 second. 169th. 169th. Done. Here we are. भाई tinnitus कैसा है अब तुम्हारा? Jatin Thakur. Have a question related to update on your tinnitus. Oh man. These tinnitus questions. They really get me. They really, they somehow manage to screw me up. I've already put it out there. All the information about my tinnitus is there. I've made videos on it. So I don't know if I have something more to say when it comes to tinnitus. Everything that I could have said, I have said already. So, thank you. Thank you for the questions. Hey Nishant, says Mr. Yogendra Pratap Singh. Hello, Mr. Singh. Should we begin? The show that we deserve, right? Let's begin the show that we deserve. I guess you can hear me. If you can hear me, we will begin. So, Mr. Singh, can you hear me? Still in one ear now, says Mr. Cloning Investing. Mr. Mohan from Atlanta, USA. Yeah, it is. So, I have given you an update video. First of TF, says Mr. Yogendra Pratap Singh. No, it's actually second. The first one happened when I was actually meeting Sanjeev sir. So I had to cancel the daytime, and then we did it at 9 p.m. So that was the first. The numbers were great. Prime time. But this is the second. So yes, I'm audible, which means we are good to go. Let's begin. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We are having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We are working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch it. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go. But before we go, we gotta follow a tradition, right? You know the tradition? You know the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all we need for the simultaneous sip is a copper mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water with black pepper in it. And here we go. Beautiful. Let's do it again. Sublime. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that we are in this together. It's just such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. There's a comment from Mr. Ashutosh Bhandekar. We have switched from good morning to good evening. Did I say good morning? I'm sorry about that. A lot happened. Again, I'm sorry for switching the time. I woke up and I couldn't talk. My throat was all out. It was just unbelievable. I couldn't talk at all. My voice was gone, right? My voice was short. I couldn't have spoken. So I read everything, but I couldn't really speak. And, I had to postpone. Sorry about that. But it's good that we are shifting for once to the prime time slot. There are a lot of people generally at this time. Let's see how we do at prime time. A lot of things happen. Dr. Michael Burry came out with his resignation, essentially. He closed the fund, Scion Capital Management, if that's the name. He shut it down with a small letter. He says that markets are essentially unhinged from fundamentals. And he doesn't, know he's not confident of his ability to essentially maneuver the markets, time the markets, and so on and so forth. So he's, with apologies, shutting down his fund. This is not the first time Scion Capital or his fund has shut down. He has this thing of shutting down the fund and resuming operations. So this is one of the many times that this has happened. A lot of people think that this is resignation. This is essentially accepting defeat from Dr. Michael Burry. Well, that is not true. This is essentially taking the scrutiny away, taking the downside away. So instead of having to worry about investor calls and investor returns and so on and so forth, maybe Dr. Burry is just looking at his capital and he's still on with his shots. It's just that he doesn't want the external responsibility. Since he's cash rich right now, he has the ability to essentially take a punt on his own capital. He's doing that. He says he's going to be coming out with a blog on 25th November, which is essentially going to highlight his thesis and his readings of the situation, which is going to be very, very valuable for everybody. Everybody who likes to read is going to benefit from that. What has happened ever since his shorts took place was, number one, Palantir and Nvidia went down. So Palantir has went down about 15%, Nvidia has went down about 9% ever since his shorts were introduced. So there, he's not doing so bad, essentially. Even though Palantir at one day picked up the stock, it again went down. So his calls shorting the market have essentially worked for now well. And then there's a new thing that is happening with Bitcoin. Did you see Bitcoin? Bitcoin has essentially fallen down below $96,000. Mr. Michael Saylor, who's a very big bull of Bitcoin, he has advised people to sell their home and buy Bitcoin. He's currently, clearly not good advice in hindsight. He has come out with a picture, a tweet, where there's this big ship which is sinking and he's on a lifeboat and he says hodl, right? Well, I don't know what he intended, but that needs to that particular meta could have been thought better. Definitely, it's not well thought of, right? It seems that he's escaping a sinking ship, which could be Bitcoin in context, right? So Bitcoin is down. People who've been punting on Bitcoin, they have thesis on Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been called as digital gold, right? Before it was first of all called a currency, then it became a store of value. Then nobody knows what it is. If it's a currency, it cannot be so volatile. If it's a store of value, a hedge against the financial market, it cannot be correlated with the markets to the extent it is, right? So essentially what Bitcoin has been doing, it's been proving itself as a leading indicator of where the financial fiat system is going, right? If Bitcoin was supposed to be such a hedge against the fiat system, how is it so correlated with the markets, right? So that's a problem. Again, we've got to remind ourselves of the thesis of Mr. Peter Thiel when it comes to Bitcoin. So Mr. Peter Thiel, very, very core libertarian, has been very pro-Bitcoin because, Bitcoin's whole anti-establishment, cypherpunk, pro-libertarian, anti-government, positioning has been very, very attractive to him. But then he said that if Bitcoin is so anti-establishment, cypherpunk, pro-libertarian tool, why is it that FBI, when I talk to FBI, they prefer people to steal money and launder money in Bitcoin? If something is so anti-establishment, you would want the people who are pro-establishment, who's basically police of the establishment, to not like that instrument. He said that people, in FBI, still want people to launder money in crypto instead of cash. So cash is harder to track than crypto. So there, it loses its entire usability as a tool, as a hedge against the financial institutions, right? Because that's what it was, right? That no government can sniff it. But if the government has been able to sniff it, right, what happens to its core proposition? There it goes. Our view on Bitcoin, we viewers of Thinkers Frequency remember, has been, it's difficult to just put myself in one bracket because, you don't want to do that essentially at this day and age. But if you're talking about Bitcoin, you're essentially talking about replacing sovereign control on money, right? And what does government have a control on, right? What is something that the government has an absolute monopoly on? It's just two things. Two things that the government has an absolute monopoly on. Can you guess those two things? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency know, of course. Two things that the government has an absolute monopoly on. Number one is anybody? Old viewers of Thinkers Frequency? Two things the government has an absolute monopoly on. Nobody? Number one is money, and number two is violence, right? These two things are government's prerogative, right? Money, says Mr. Neeraj Kumawat, correct? And second is violence, right? And if Mr. Sumanth Kumar says currency, if the government essentially cedes control of money, how will the government survive? So the only way for Bitcoin to get accepted is basically government ceding control of money. And that I see is kind of a proposition, right? So then the only use for Bitcoin becomes illegal transaction. But if illegal transactions, are easily trackable with Bitcoin, it loses its utility there as well. So in order for Bitcoin to actually flourish, it'll behoove the governments to actually cede control of money, right? Because Bitcoin essentially cannot be controlled by just one party, right? Which is what money is all about. So that I don't see happening. This is why Bitcoin becomes especially important in places like Nigeria, where currency is falling apart, right? So people feel the need to have something which is beyond government control, because government is absolutely screwed. So that is our view on Bitcoin. However, something that has gotten so much of money, it's hard for that to, crash to zero. A lot of people say that you're going to lose everything on Bitcoin, right? Well, can't say that. So I'll not base a prediction on that. Personally, I've not been pro Bitcoin ever, right? I think it just doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, I see its merit when it comes to cross-border transactions. Again, making cross-border transactions happen in Bitcoin essentially means that you're stepping away from government's paradigm. And that means, that you're sidestepping the government. If you're sidestepping the government, there are two things that can happen. Government just accepts it, or the government regulates it, right? Or the government blocks it. Three things, right? Either of the things, the government just can't accept it because, it loses money. Either it regulates it or it opposes it altogether. Both of those situations are not nice for Bitcoin as a principle, right? So there goes Bitcoin's analysis. A few comments. Cloning investing. Also, no need to report to Securities and Exchange. Bitcoin will reach 150,000 soon, says Mr. Deboyati Hazra. It's time to buy. So that's Mr. That's exactly what Bitcoin bulls sound like. It's gonna go to 2,000K. It's gonna 200,000K, and so on and so forth. It's gonna touch $1 million and so on. So again, it's a battle of perspectives. I don't think of Bitcoin in terms of speculating its value, because that essentially takes away its value, right? Then you're admitting that it's basically a speculative asset. Its value isn't proved, right? Its value, its core first principles value, you can't say anything about that. It's just that you want it to go up. The only reason you buy Bitcoin is because it goes up, right? And that's a definition of a bubble, right? If there is no fundamental value of something, but the only reason you want to buy Bitcoin is because it goes up, right? That is a Ponzi. Not a bubble, but a Ponzi. So let's see what happens there. Speaking of, what happens there, the government shutdown has gotten over with. US government is back again. So that's what's happening. Mr. Avijit Kumawat says, big fan. So sweet of you. Thank you. So, the government shutdown has gotten over with. Republicans have essentially taken control. They've won. They were supposed to win. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency, remember how I said it was gonna pan out, right? Democrats have no chips. Republicans have all the chips. And it's essentially just an embarrassing situation for Democrats. Whatever has happened. White House just tweeted, we are so back. When it comes to that, what happens when the government comes back? A lot of market activity, of course. They're going to report numbers of October, but not going to report the unemployment rates. We talked about how that is very, very fishy, right? Very fishy if you're not reporting numbers of the previous months, but just because the government was in a shutdown. Even the delayed reports might have helped, right? Tracking of them. But there are reports that some of the aspects of those government numbers will not be disclosed. That is weird. That is very weird. So again, just as we talked, I guess yesterday or day before, we don't know how this is going, right? Some people say the US government is doing very well. Some people say it's not. Its growth prospects are about 1.7%, 1.8% GDP growth in 2026, 2027. China, on the other hand, has about 4.3 to 4.2, 2026, 27. India, 6.5, 6.8. Global economy, about 2.5%. India shining through. But US, very weird situation, whatever is happening. Let's see what they do. The Fed essentially might just be, it's not clear whether the rate cut is going to happen. Speaking of rate cuts, folks, Indian government essentially, Indian RBI might have to look at a rate cut because of the inflation numbers going way low, right? Since inflation numbers have dipped so significantly, RBI might just be looking at a rate cut in December. How do you think about that? Viewers of Thinkers Frequency know how markets and how the principles of money essentially work when rate cuts happen, right? More money in the supply, more inflation, more growth, more lending, more activity in the public markets. I mean, retail markets, more job opportunities, definitely, and so on and so on. So, right, that's exactly what's looking. Speaking of India and China, because China has a lot to say. China's credit growth in October is lowest over a year on sluggish demand. Chinese economy, as usual, is showing a lot of trouble signs. People overestimate the problems that Chinese economy has, right? Even at a $17 trillion scale, China is looking at a growth rate of about 5%, 4.2, 4.8, whatever, right? That is a lot of growth for that economy, that size, right? But there are some clear signs of problems, of course, the real estate market, the domestic economy, the domestic consumption that they're trying to boost, right? And the exports that have slowed down because of the tariff situation. Now that the tariffs are coming down from US, the relationships are warming up. Let's see what happens. But at the moment, credit growth in October is lower, right? Moving on, folks. UK economy is not doing, it's pretty much in the toilet, right? 0.1 Q3 growth brings gloom for UK before November 26 budget. Export to India has slowed down because of BIS too. Now we're going to talk about exports to India. We're going to talk about exports to India, by the way, of China have not gone down. They're going up, and we're going to discuss that. Let's move on, folks. UK economy, we've talked enough about UK economy in the past, so we won't go ahead. Moving on, Satcom may set phones ringing in remote areas. So Satcom is looking at something called D2M. D2M is direct to mobile, right? Direct to device, direct to mobile. If direct to mobile, if Satcoms go direct to mobile in remote areas, let's say in the beginning, that is a direct challenge to telcos, right? This is why telcos were opposing Satcoms before essentially tying up with them. So if you've been following the history of Satcom and telco fight in India, telcos didn't want Satcom, right? They viewed it as competition. They said that it's going to hurt the telco business in a big way, right? So we shouldn't be essentially making it mainstream, or if we are, they should be subjected to the same, let's say, AGR that the telcos have to do. So AGR is adjusted growth revenue. The levies should be the same. It should be treated as a spectrum, and it should be charged as a spectrum. So people, but then political things happen. As I've told you, all business outcomes are a result of political will. When Donald Trump and Elon Musk were having a Mr. Musk and Mr. Trump were having a serious bond harmony, right? And then India had to make a decision. India essentially approved Starlink in India. Airtel and Jio both became distributors of Starlink, and then that relationship essentially evolved. So despite Airtel having its own OneWeb Eutelstat and Jio having its own Satcom play, they both became distributors of Starlink, right? And when that happened, the situation sort of calmed a bit, but the truth of the matter is that Satcom is a direct threat to telcos, and it becomes a real direct threat to telcos if direct to device, right, DoD essentially is allowed, right? And that is going to be allowed in the beginning, starting from remote areas, and the enforcement of it is a bit problematic. DOT likely to ask try for suggestions on direct to device services, their pricing, right? They say that buying a terminal might just be expensive, that has a cost prohibition, but the direct to device might not be a cost prohibition, so it will be direct competition and it will directly hurt the telco. So that is a risk. We've talked about how Satcom is one of the three pieces which are going to have 10x growth very, very soon. 10x growth. 10x growth in what? 2 years? That's what we said. 10x growth in 2 years. Right now, Hughes, which is an Airtel arm, Nelco, and all of these people still offer Satcom services, but now it's going to go mainstream in a very, very big way, right? Satcom based services to become widespread. Telcos fear this can cannibalize their revenues. Seek same rules for Satcom companies. So how do you kill an industry? You basically regulate it, and that's what telcos are wanting. That Satcom should have same regulations as them. That's not going to happen, for now at least. Export to certain categories where BIS is becoming mandatory. Overall, it might have gone up, says Mr. Nishant Kumar. We're going to talk about that. Right? So that's exactly what's happening. Consultations, serious consultations on about Satcom. This is a sector which has room for 10x. So let's see how you can ride the wave. You can ride the wave how you want to ride the wave. This is something it can go 10x, right? As an investor, as an observer, this has that potential. Moving on, folks. 20 lakh crore projects, 2 million jobs in Andhra's pipeline, says a report. And usual commentary on this is that these announcements don't mean a thing. MOUs don't mean a thing. Most of this doesn't go on the ground, which is true. To respond to that, Chandrababa Naidu government says these MOUs are not on paper. Each investment is genuine and will come into the state within the next 3 to 5 years, right? 3 to 4 years. I'm happy to share that on last 6 months, my cabinet has cleared investments of 9 lakh crores, right? So they said one of their election promises was that they want 20 lakh jobs, 2 million jobs in Andhra Pradesh. And it seems like they are moving forward very, very, very quickly. So that is exactly, that's obviously a very, very good news, right? Tying up with a lot of companies, Singapore, government as well. We will create ecosystems so that this investment momentum continues. We have lost heavily because they tampered with everything. Again, so we don't discuss politics. We won't go there. But they say that we're going to bring a new era in the history of Andhra Pradesh. How many of you believe it's going to happen? Well, I'm very, without being political, I'm very happy since good things are happening to the state. I'm sorry. I'm very happy that good things are happening to the state, and I wouldn't want the momentum to go down, no matter who is playing who, right? Speaking of momentum or the lack of it, Supreme Court has said something very, very insightful when it comes to Delhi pollution. They've come out with the insight of the century. Do you know what they've said? Can you guess what they've said, folks? They're very insightful, something very new, something which nobody else could have said, right? They've said that, and again, drum roll, they've said Delhi air pollution is very, very serious. What do you think about that, folks? Very, very serious. This is said that Delhi air pollution is very, very serious. Avail the online, hearing opportunity. Don't come to the court. And just yesterday, we talked about how they were asking for reports. Again, when you talk about the Delhi air pollution issue, it's so political. It's so transparently political that it's just hilarious. So there's a think tank, Ashoka University, somebody called Mr. Agrawal from Ashoka University. He says he's come out. Uh, he's come out with an analysis of the situation. He says that the effects of Delhi pollution are going to be very, very bad, right? And then he says that most of Delhi's pollution is produced within the city. So in a way, he says that stubble burning has no role to play in Delhi's pollution, right? Now this is so overtly political and like transparently dumb, right? If Delhi's pollution problem is due to the construction dust or the problems that Delhi generates itself, why does it only happen in winters, right? Why does it only happen in the winters, right? That is a question. And this is a person who is representing an institution like Ashoka University. He's supposed to be an intellectual, and he says this. What do you think about that, folks? This is why I say that we are doing a very good job when we avoid talking about politics altogether. The more we talk about politics, right, or the more politically bent we become, right, it just clouds our behavior. It makes cognitive dissonance so apparent and so pathetic. Just imagine this intellectual saying Delhi produces most of its contaminants, air contaminants in house. Then, sir, why does it only happen in winters? Silence, silence, right? Silence. That's it. The all you need to break the, so to speak, expert's viewpoint is just ask a smart question, and that's it. It falls like a house of cards. It's pathetic. Moving on, folks. There are a few comments. This one landed very well. We all the taxpayers could have saved a lot of money. Says Mr. Sumanth Kumar. Mr. Rajat Mittal, my brother, says landed very well. That's such a revelation. Wouldn't have known that without SC's insight. Says Mr. Yogendra Pratap Singh. Peeyush Sethi, Mr. Peeyush Sethi says, lol. Yeah, it is laughable. It's absolutely hilariously pathetic, but it is what it is, right? So move on, folks. Let's move on. Big twist in IPO blockbusters. Large issues see robust demands. Average subscription of IPOs going up, right? Lenskart's IPO, big IPOs. A lot of big IPOs have done really well. After HDB, after Tata Capital, we expected large IPOs to have some sort of muted subscription, right? But that has not happened. IPOs are still booming. There is no train. Like even Lenskart share is holding on right now. It is supposed to hold on for a couple of weeks, after which I expect it to go where it goes. Again, please don't report me to SEBI. I don't want SEBI on my ass, right? But we expect something to happen as far as the whole IPO play is considered. It's just that it hasn't happened as yet, right? Speaking of what hasn't happened as yet, clarity on AI ruling. You remember we talked about how AI rules, AI regulation is going to be a bit of a hassle. You remember how we talked about AI regulation and how it's so hard to regulate AI? Because if you regulate AI, you essentially slow it down. If you slow it down, somebody who doesn't regulate, he catches up and he kills you, right? So AI regulation is basically a Kobayashi Maru situation. Do you know about Kobayashi Maru situation? Of course you do. Regular viewers of Thinkers Frequency, remember what Kobayashi Maru situation is, right? I hope you do. So if you don't, or if people who are new to Thinkers Frequency are watching, I'll tell you what Kobayashi Maru situation is. Kobayashi Maru situation is basically a movie or a book reference. It's a Star Wars thing, right? It's a situation where the character, Captain Kirk, essentially had a person who was astray, right? And that person was in a territory. If you try to rescue that person, you know, there comes a war and everybody dies. And if you do not rescue that person, right, he dies. So essentially, it's a no-win situation, right? No-win situation. But then Kobayashi Maru happened. What Captain Kirk did is he found a solution which was outside the rules, right? And he saved it. So Kobayashi Maru is that situation where it is a no-win game. It's a no-win game. And regulating AI is also a no-win game. So if you regulate AI, you know, you regulate a booming technology, as a country, you lose out because there's going to be somebody who doesn't regulate AI. Right? And then they're going to win. But if you do not regulate AI, AI becomes all powerful and it kills you, right? So it's your AI which kills you, or it's somebody else's AI which kills you. That is the Kobayashi Maru situation. A small part of that essentially got in play when they were talking about marking deep fake videos, right? Deep fake videos. They just wanted the companies to essentially mark deep fake videos so that people can know that this is AI and this is real, right? It was not a big ask, and that was the first regulatory step in content related to AI, right? But what happened? Companies started opposing that as well, and companies opposed that it essentially caused a bottleneck. So you don't know what's happening there at all, right? That's what's happening. A comment, Mr. Neeraj Kumar says, Grow is already 1.5x of their listing price. Yeah, very. Grow, by the way, is, again, not a stock recommendation. We don't do that here, but it's a solid company. Moving on. The car market, the small car market is booming. We've talked about that. The GST rationalization has helped the small car market. They rock solid, says Mr. So they're basically looking at a 5-year high when it comes to sales of small car. Now, if you've been watching Thinkers Frequency, you know how important small cars have been to Indian economy, right? Mr. R.C. Bhargav says, he's the chief of Maruti, of course, a very, very sharp person. He says that in order to save Indian economy, in order to save Indian auto sector, you need the small cars to sell, right? So that's what's happening with small cars. They're coming back, which is great news. Mahindra, by the way, the biggest SUV maker of the country, it's coming out with an insurance company. So plan life insurance ride, now entering the life insurance business. As we know, viewers of Thinkers Frequency know, the government's goal in 2047 is insurance for all. Insurance for all is a Viksit Bharat goal, right? And with insurance for all and with GST rationalization on insurance, on personal insurance, it's zero. You're going to see a lot of activity because there's finally a lot of room to grow, and people are actually looking at going in the insurance play. So there used to be a lot of hesitation from Indian populace when it came to insurance market. Not anymore. The times change. Times are gone for the honest man. That's just a song by Soundgarden, right? Black Hole Sun. Moving on, folks. Job market has gotten back in track this year. Job market numbers are good. Hiring in the first 10 months of the current year has improved marginally from a year ago. ET analysis from HSBC and S&P Global Markets say Naukri did well, right? They said it's cautious optimism that they're talking about. So let's see what happens. A lot of political chit chat, folks. What we got to acknowledge at least is that Bihar results are out, and we don't discuss politics. We don't discuss politics, but they're out, and it's a clean sweep. It's just a unbelievable landslide. What it's gonna lead to is some good news for industries that were looking at investing in Bihar, right? Political continuity is very important for business investments. As I've said, most business outcomes are a result of political will, and political will rests on political continuity. If political continuity exists, you can expect the business to have some sort of stability in operations and stability when it comes to future, planning for the future. Moving on, folks. We're not going to talk about the whole bomb blast situation, right? Because that just makes me sad. And, let the research come out. There's a very good heuristic when it comes to dealing with such news or such information. Whatever comes out in the fog of war, right? It just makes sense to not notice it and keep just let it evolve, let the situation. So when it comes to a war kind of a situation, right? Whatever information you encounter during that period, most of it has extreme probability of being fake. So it's called fog of war, of course. So right now that situation, whatever we are hearing, it's a fog of war kind of a situation. So it's best avoided. Let's just see how it shapes up, right? That's what's happening. We've talked about. Do you remember what we said when it came to steel manufacturing? Steel manufacture in India. Mr. Jindal recently in an interview said that we need to have protection for Indian steel, because it's gonna get demolished if we don't protect it, right? There needs to be some solid anti-dumping laws and enforcement of them for us to stay intact, because Indian steel is very important. China makes more steel than the rest of the world combined, and if we let China destroy our Indian steel, it's going to be a bit of a problem, right? Anti-dumping duty has been imposed on Vietnam for 5 years, right? All business outcomes are a result of political will. Anti-dumping duty on Vietnam. Why Vietnam? Because most of Chinese supplies were getting rerouted through Vietnam. They did that to Nepal, they did that to Vietnam. Now they're going to do that however they can to save the Indian steel, right? Speaking of commodities, Odisha, by the way, is in talks with NTPC, and NPCIL for nuclear power plants. We've talked about how nuclear has a lot of scope. We keep talking about how it is an industry which is also going to grow 10x in the next 6 to 8 years, right? It has extraordinary potential to grow and also lead to an energy revolution of the country. India had to sort of delay its plans for nuclear a little, right? They're still doing well. So renewables, their plans are up. The target they had was 50% before 2030. They achieved 50% from renewables in 2025 itself. That's great news. But nuclear will take time, a lot of steps. Odisha is talking. NTPC conducting studies, structure of joint ventures, and also discussion. Moving on, folks. Inflation has shrunk after GST cuts. What do you expect? Of course, you expect inflation to get cut. Inflation, GST going away, prices of things going cheaper, going down, prices going down, inflation going down. Inflation going down, good news for a lot of people, for bad news for people who are actually manufacturing or making those stuffs. India is an agrarian economy, and if core inflation goes down, prices of food and vegetables go down, it becomes very difficult to sustain for a lot of producers of that particular commodity, right? So that's exactly why it's not just so. RBI has a target of 4% inflation. Right now we are at 2.4%, 2.5%, right? That's too low. And if it gets into a deflationary zone, it's a bit of an issue. So let's see what happens. This again makes it pertinent for RBI to respond with a rate cut kind of a situation. Let's see what happens. Let's see how they respond to this particular play, right? Moving on, folks. Some numbers came out. LG net dropped 27%, revenue up, very, very small. Tata Motors commercial vehicle slid into a loss because despite a good show. So Tata Motors commercial vehicle segment, the tractor play, they did very well, but they made a loss in this quarter. Why did they make a loss in this quarter? Because they had a mark-to-market loss on their investment in Tata Capital, because Tata Capital went down, so they had to account for that lot in their books. So it went down, but still the company has great prospects. LG says that the business got hit this time because of the whole the GST rationalization play, but it's gonna pick up. Of course, what did I tell you? What did I tell you about FMCGs? What did I tell you about electronics? What did I tell you about automakers? This particular quarter, right? The October, November, December quarter. This is gonna be a blockbuster quarter for these players. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency, remember, this is 169th episode. We've been talking about the first 10 episodes, how this market is going to shape up. We predicted that the first few quarters, the first 2-3 quarters are going to be bad. Then we predicted that this particular quarter, is when things start shaping up. And then coincidentally, GST rationalization also happened in that particular quarter. These things started shaping up. And then we're going to have the best ever consumer festive season, which is exactly what's coming out to be. Right? Hero MotoCorp, again 16% rise. It's basically a broad-based growth in automotive sector. Hero MotoCorp doing well, not because it's doing something special on its own. No, it's not. But it's just that the whole sector essentially is pretty green right now, right? So its numbers are good. 16% net up, revenue also up in double digits. Pretty cool, folks. Pretty cool. What's not cool? What's not cool is the pharma companies. Small and medium micro MSME of pharma are going to face problems, are going to face shutdowns because regulators have ordered compliance inspections, right? Because of the whole, you remember, this is an evolving story. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency know why pharma is in trouble because of our lack of compliance and adherence to good compliance practices. the bad products of pharma essentially came out in the market and started killing people. The whole, this particular play, the cough syrups, right? Which basically which made it necessary for the government to take this very, very seriously, and uh, due to which now what they're gonna do is gonna have very, very big compliance rounds. A lot of companies, a lot of small and medium companies, they'll not pass those tests, and they'll be forced to shut down. So right now there are 5,000 people like that, 5,000 industries. A lot of them will face shutdown. They are saying that we need support, right? We don't need strict compliance and regulatory overload right now. We need support. But the regulator is of the view that you've been getting support for a very long time. These lapses are not because of lack of support or lack of capital. They are willful cases of carelessness. So that is their reading of the situation. This is what's going to happen. MSMEs seek more time to implement revised requirements. Companies with turnover under 250 crore could seek timeline expansion by submitting a plan of upgradation, they say. So let's see what happens there. We've already talked about the small car play, right? 7,50,000 units. Not sure if this letter from Dr. Michael Burry was already discussed. It was. It was, Mr. Peeyush Sethi. Let's move forward, folks. Let's move forward. Hero Future, Andhra Inc, Green Energy Pact, right? A lot of pacts. TV channels find it harder to boost viewership via landing pages. Now, this is a very interesting play. So, if you know about BARC is the BARC is the rating body of TV viewership. Okay, how does BARC work? It has its receivers, its antennas based out of some sample homes where they detect inaudible signals, inaudible audio signals. They place those signals, they detect it, and basis those signals, they essentially find out the viewership, right? So they have some 1,70,000 homes or something of that sort, where these inaudible signals, of course, they can't invade privacy, right? They can't just keep a mic on your TV and find out what's going on. They don't do that. So they have these inaudible signals which they find out, right? And those inaudible signals are leading to all the TRP numbers that we know. Now, what happens to those inaudible signals is that sometimes people just leave TV open, and that is basically landing page. Now, that landing page essentially causes the TRP numbers to go up because it's not getting used, but it's a landing page, right? And because it's a landing page, it flips the numbers up. Now they're saying that it's not going to happen. So I'll just read the report for you. The Information Broadcasting Ministry may direct BARC to use separate audio watermarking for landing pages to prevent channels for inflating viewership numbers. So they're saying that these landing pages need to have different audible signals, inaudible signals from the real channel, so that the TV viewership numbers are more accurate. Now the question is, wasn't this happening already? Well, if this was the case, were these numbers ever correct, right? Could you have ever relied on these numbers where such a simple thing like landing pages, right? They don't have a different inaudible signal, and you were counting that in the TRPs? Doesn't that make TRPs basically a bunch of bullshit? This is a very good question. Now, this is what this is happening. It's called cutting the corners. When an industry is in decline, you'd see this with every industry. Whenever an industry is in decline, they're always looking at cutting the corners. They're always looking at all of these things. Don't happen when the industry is doing very well, when the industry is growing. When the industry is growing, there's a lot of froth in the ecosystem. There's a lot of fugazi. There's a lot of bullshit which covers bad practices. But when an industry goes down, right, and TV definitely is going down. So we've talked about this. 2015, there were 150 million DTH, right? 2025, they are less than 100 million. And 2030, they're going to be 75 million. So just in 15 years, you're going to be essentially looking at the entire industry going half. And when the industry falls like this is when you start seeing this phenomena of cutting the corners, right? cutting the corners. So you just see that nobody thought of this since time immemorial. When they were running TV, when they were running BARC, when they were doing the TRPs, nobody thought of this. That hey, landing pages should be different, right? So that the numbers don't get inflated. Because then the industry wasn't facing such existential issues. This is something that you should always notice in other industries. Growing industries won't ever have these concerns, right? They'll be looking at green shoots. When industries are bottoming out, that's when you go see a lot of lawsuits, finding the last buck that you can steal, which is exactly what's happening with TV. A lot of lawsuits, a lot of cutting the corners, and so on and so forth. Very fascinating. Moving on, folks. ED has arrested former chairman of Jaypee Associates, Mr. Manoj Gaur. Gaur family, Jaypee Associates, founding family. He's been arrested because there's some problems with the whole money. Money, how it was going from the home buying projects to other affiliate entities and so on and so forth. This is coming at an odd time, right? When Gors are trying to have a bid at bringing their company back, right? This is when the ED play is happening. I suspect some weird coincidence. Is it coincidence, right? Whatever is weird, you can call it a coincidence and you can move on, right? So that's what's happening with this particular play. Very interesting development. Let's see how it happens. Andhra Pradesh renew signed 60,000 crore clean energy pact. A clean energy push. Renew Energy Global, a leading decarbonization solutions company, signed a major agreement with Andhra Pradesh to invest 60,000 crore in setting up large-scale green projects across the state. This is in continuation of the Andhra Pradesh story. 20 lakh crores, 2 million jobs, and so on and so forth. Let's see how it shapes up. Moving on, folks. Easier imports for key sectors as 14 BIS quality orders scrapped. So this is what a viewer was talking about. Right, move to cut raw materials cost of textile industry. So this is in response to the whole textile tariff situation. Now, textile tariff, when US placed tariffs on Indian textile, it exposed a weakness of the industry, right? Again, cutting the corners, right? Whenever you face a crisis, that's when you cut the corners. When US placed a tariff on Indian textiles, we found out that without favorable tariff situation, we are basically uncompetitive, right? What happens if the tariffs don't favor us? And you can't rely on tariffs for essentially running an entire industry for the country, right? You've got to strengthen the industry. Now, how do you strengthen the industry? You essentially bring the input costs down so that the exports become competitive. One way is through doing that by devaluing your currency. But let's say if you can't devalue your currency, like in a country like India cannot devalue its currency. So how do you deal with it? You bring the import cost down. How do you bring the import cost down? You allow some imports of materials which are cheaper to get from outside, right? And that's exactly what's happening with textile. They first of all allowed cotton to get imported, and now they're allowing a lot of plastics which are used in the manufacturing of clothes, essentially, let's say, textile. So that's exactly what's happening. Move to cut raw material costs for textiles, chemicals and plastic companies. BIS control orders. This is essentially a regulatory overhang which has gone away. Used in garments, fertilizers, packaging. Covered chemical, polymer, fiber-based. QCOs increase compliance costs for MSMEs. Right? Made Indian manufacturing goods uncompetitive. Forced use of expensive domestic polyester. Imports now cheaper and easier. So Indian companies will have easier time importing these particular raw materials. First came cotton, then came... Now my question is, would this not kill the Indian companies that manufacture, let's say, these core raw materials, right? Would this not get them out of the business? Of course it would. Of course it would. But maybe they are too few, and they are essentially a choice, a trade-off that you have to. So when it came to cotton farmers, right? Supporting Indian cotton farmers and letting Indian imports of cotton come. I was of the view that government is not going to let the farmers slide, but they did. They did allow cotton imports to support the textile manufacturing players. So these are essentially choices which led. Speaking of this, the effect of this is that Chinese exports of these particular plays have increased. So Chinese exports to India have increased, not decreased. That's what I meant, right? Uh, Chinese polyester fiber available to Indian garment and fabric manufacturers at 20 to 25 lower rates percent than domestic polyester, right? And that's gonna come in. So that's exactly the decision of rescinding QC on polyester fiber is a big move to make India competitive in MMF, man-made fiber, which has 70% market share. With the already bagged FTAs, India looks to become a global leader in apparel and textiles. So that's what's happening. I hope that I've explained it well. This is one of the ways that you make exports competitive. Other ways is, of course, the credit guarantee scheme. So they've come out with a 2,000 crore credit scheme for Indian exporters. We've talked about that, right? We've talked a lot about that. Let's move forward. India and Russia, of course, are making more trade happen, right? Hospitals and insurers urged to make health cover affordable. Hospitals and insurers were at crossroads, at crosshairs, a lot of problems. That is somehow becoming better, right? Some comments on LinkedIn which I'll have to address. Hi sir, how are you? How to survive in this edtech boom? Edtech bane, I guess, right? How to survive in this edtech bane kind of a movement. Okay. That's a very long discussion. Mr. Deepak Kumar. Deepak Kumar. We'll have to talk about that. We'll have to talk about that, folks. Yeah, so we were talking about the financial institutions, hospitals and insurers, right? So they are essentially being talked into by the government to create better outcomes as far as cost is considered for Indians. Now, India is already the cheapest healthcare provider in the world. That's why medical tourism is rising up. And, the founder of one of the leading, or the leader, the chief of one of the leading hospitals said that Indian inflation in healthcare costs is about 9%, which is nothing as compared to the costs which the medical institutions, hospitals are bearing in upgrading facilities and so on and so forth. So India is very, very cheap. It's doing very well when it comes to managing costs and providing cheaper healthcare, cheapest healthcare provider in the world. But it could still go better, right? And it's at least the whole coordination with the insurance play that could go better. So that's what's being discussed about. Indian-Russian listing of domestic firms. India and Russia want the trading opportunity to cross $100 billion. Right now it's at about $20 billion, $25 billion. They wanted to go up to $100 billion. So India wants more products going to Russia. Of course, no surprise there. Moving on, folks. Delhi NCR unlivable. Expert. And the expert is from Ashoka, who's spewing pure bullshit, as we discussed in the beginning of the episode. Let's move on, folks. Let's move on. Peak XV has made good returns on Pine Labs, right? 1 billion plus likely gains. Early commitment in 2009 turns into what's called 30 bagger. Well, no surprise there. Manipal is looking at buying Baiju's parent. Well, that case has been going on for a very long time. We've talked about it in a lot of depth, so we're not going to discuss Baiju's. But Baiju is a story for the books. I've written a lot of articles around Baiju, so you can read them. Let's move on. We've talked about how OpenAI financial concerns are very huge. So recent interview happened with Sam Altman, Mr. Sam Altman. He was interviewed by somebody called Mr. Brad, and he asked, how can a company with $13 billion in revenue have capex commitments of about 1.4 trillion? Right? To which Mr. Sam Altman responded in a very, confusing fashion. He said that, hey, Brad, first of all, we are doing way over 13 billion. Secondly, if you're so concerned about OpenAI's shares, I could have somebody buy your shares, right? So you could sell your shares, and definitely there'll be a lot of people who want to buy your shares, That's how he responded, and that sort of became a meme, right? That's how it became a very, very weird kind of a situation. A lot of people said that, whoa, 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 this is like the peak bubble moment, right? This is that interview. People started drawing parallels with Enron. Enron was an energy company, ventured into financial services, became a very, very, very big bubble kind of a scandal kind of a situation. In that interview, Mr. Jeff Skilling said, one of the analysts asked that you're the only financial services company who has not laid out their sheets properly. And he said, wow, thank you for this question. And then he said, asshole, right? And that was the peak of Enron. And that's after that, Enron essentially crashed. So people started drawing a lot of parallels of OpenAI with Enron. But again, that is definitely a lot of concerns when it comes to AI, right? Circular transactions, companies investing in their customers so that they can buy more of their own products, a lot of that. Mr. Musk coming out with a statement that he's going to come out with his own chips, and those are going to be 90% cheaper than the ones in by Nvidia. So that is, of course, a very, very weird situation, whatever is happening in AI, right? Let's see how that story unfolds. A lot of people say it's a bubble. Well, of course it is, financially. But Mr. Bezos said that it could be a bubble financially, but utility-wise, AI is like electricity. It's gonna change everything it touches, which was a pretty interesting and an insightful statement. Very insightful statement. Moving on, folks. Moving on. We've talked about Mahindra and Mahindra venturing into insurance. We've talked about Asian Paints yesterday. It did well, right? The key rival, Birla Opus, changed its CEO. What's the best thing that can happen to your business? That your competition essentially blows up, it implodes. Something like that, not to that level, happened to Asian Paints. Asian Paints, very big competition. Birla Opus had its CEO reshuffling and so on and so forth. Industry overall wasn't looking that green because a lot of competition was emerging, right? AkzoNobel acquisition by Jindals, and then of course Birla, and then everybody's gaining steam, the whole market going down a little, so on and so forth. But Asian Paints, Reliance also sold its shareholding in Asian Paints, which was seen as a very, very dark chapter, but the company has managed well. Despite being the market leader, Asian Paints reported higher growth than its peers, which is a great play execution wise, right? Every company in paints grew up a little. Great execution by Asian Paints. Let's see how the market responds, right? Speaking of the market, less trade rules to curb speculation weigh on brokers. The brokers make a lot of money when the volumes are up, right? But in a falling market or a regulated market or a very compliance driven market, the volumes suffer, right? Now, you know what happened to RBI, how it dealt with future and options, right? Which were killing the whole business, right? Brokers got hurt. So they are saying that brokers have a lot to worry when it comes to their volumes, because listed firms have posted a decline in profit over the last quarter because all the regulations that RBI imposed on future and options to protect retail investors. Now, all those regulations are necessary to save the retail investors from an absolute blow up, right? But in that kind of a compliant environment, earnings go down, and that's exactly what happened. So nobody should be surprised. We talked a lot about this when this was happening, when this was first, the whole Jane Street play, when it happened. We said it's gonna be affecting the whole play, the earnings of these people, angel broking and so on and so forth, right? And that's exactly what happened. Regarding rate cuts, not everybody's sure on how RBI is going to deal with that situation. But for now, it seems very possible that something is going to happen in that area. Let's move on, folks. India's textile exports to 111 markets rise 10% in April-September, right? Textile exports grow up, reflecting a strong resilience in the first half. Well, this particular report is late because action actually happened in the second half of the second quarter, right? Second and third quarter. So this number, even though this number says something, 10% rise in April to September quarter, it's not very important because magic happened later. So let's see what happens in the textile market after that particular thing has happened. And we've discussed how you deal with that situation, how the government has dealt with that situation. They've said that tariffs are to be dealt in a very, very pragmatic way. When there is a tariff, there is a tariff. How do you deal with the tariff? You find alternate markets, you offshore the production, you devalue the currency, you provide credit support, you reduce income tax input costs, you enhance the domestic consumption, and so on. So these are 5 or 6 things which you have to do. That's exactly what the government did. Let's see how India surfaces. For now, US stocks are down, Bitcoin is down, gold is up a little, gold is good, right? Everything essentially is conflicting signals. Nobody knows what's happening. In this market, it's very difficult to predict, right? It's difficult to predict. But as Mr. Nassim Taleb says, it's better than predicting. What you can do is keep yourself in a position where you gain if things screw up, right? So viewers of Thinkers Frequency already know what that means. And with that, we'll come to the end of the 169th episode of Thinkers Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. I hope you liked the episode. I hope you found it fun. I hope it added a lot of value to you. It definitely added a lot of value to me. I had a lot of fun, as I always do. It was really nice talking. I am so glad we didn't cancel the episode altogether. For now, until now, our cancellation record is just one episode. So we've just cancelled one episode as of now, right? 2 episodes didn't happen because I was traveling, so that won't count. But 1 episode, that's cool. 169, right? That's nice. I wish you a beautiful day, personally and professionally. This is not our time to punch in, right? I wish you a beautiful day, personally and professionally. I hope you had a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Not the same time, but same place, hopefully. Please take care. I should thank Mr. Cloning Investin, Mr. Jatin Thakur, Mr. Yogendra Pratap Singh, Mr. Ashutosh Bhandekar, Mr. Debuyati Hazra, Mr. Neeraj Kumawat, Mr. Sumanth Kumar, Mr. Rajat Mittal, Mr. Peeyush Sethi, Mr. Avijit Kumawat, Mr. Deepak Kumar, and everybody else who joined. I hope you had fun, right? Please take care. Bye-bye.